Hello, my name is Ken Sandy. I'm the author of the influential product manager, How to Lead and Launch Successful Technology Products. For 2 decades, I have worked in the San Francisco Bay Area as a product manager and executive. I've worked across a variety of industries, and I'm here to talk about one that I'm most passionate about, education technology. I hope to inspire some of you to explore your career as a product leader in this professionally and personally fulfilling and impactful space. I will cover 3 areas today. First, what it is like working in the ultra cross-functional environment found in many EdTech companies as Silicon Valley meets the world of the content creators and instructional design. Secondly, how traditional tech company user behavioral and product performance metrics are essential, but far from sufficient in measuring the achievement of desired learning outcomes. Finally, how technology will continue to enable major changes in how we learn online and offline, specifically the rise of deeply interactive and collaborative learning, going well beyond passive consumption of materials, and how big data can be used to predict and customize the experience to drive greater learning efficiency and follow through on part of the learner. But first, a little more background on me. I spent 10 years in EdTech. Primarily, I've been focused on adult and college learning, such as career, professional, and personal skills training for undergraduate studies ranging to executive education programs. I've most experience with the go-to models of primarily selling either directly to a consumer or through a SaaS model into an organization. Most of the companies I have worked for predominantly are video-based platforms and project-based learning. So my bias will be towards this type of customer and this type of learning solution. Less on, say, K-12 younger learners, languages, compliance training, and anything non-video based. Companies I've been involved with include LinkedIn Learning, previously lynda.com, a skills-based instructional service, largely video, acquired for $1.5 billion in 2015. Masterclass, where I participated in its transformation from a handful of classes into a subscription service just shy of 100 classes with thousands of lessons from the world's most well-known talent. University of California, Berkeley, where I founded, created, and still teach the first of its kind product management class within the engineering department. And I've worked at over a half dozen organizations in the executive resident consulting, advisory, or guest instructor capacity. So what are some of my observations and learnings from working in EdTech over the past 10 years? Number 1, as the head of product, we are generally charged with developing the applications, experience, and technologies that is the product. This includes the evaluation of unsolved needs and creations of solutions to address these, the applications and interfaces to distribute and deliver the product in a usable way, and underlying technologies and tools, such as the platform, analytics to enable insights to further improve the product, and tools to support internal teams in their roles. In addition to design and engineering, you may only have 1 or 2 key stakeholders to collaborate with, such as sales and marketing. Yet in an EdTech company, the product is more than likely than not a combination of a set of interdependent solutions owned by different functional groups, each providing their unique contribution in their own way. One of those is the creative or content team. They use a process that is very evolved and complex. They develop curriculum systematically, thoughtfully, and thoroughly, designed to ensure that the learner can move from start to finish without getting overwhelmed. Instructors must be chosen with great care to ensure an engaging and inspiring experience. Some courses might be scripted, but generally not as much as you might expect. Otherwise, the instructor might sound ingenuine or stiff, or you lose capturing those spontaneous moments. They must also orchestrate a complex production process to capture high-quality raw footage, sometimes under great time pressure. In video learning, this includes everything from set design and setup, sound and video capture, and direction. A lot of trust and rapport must be built quickly between the instructor and the crew. Changes are made on the fly as the team decides whether or not they're getting what they need. And then that is followed by the post-production process, involving incredible amounts of video and sound editing to achieve a high-quality result meeting the desired objectives. And then it is also user tested, sometimes requiring re-editing to address issues discovered once it's all been put together. But even before the content creation process, a set of teams must establish a pedagogy that defines the instructional approach, a content strategy, and a set of desired learning outcomes to be used consistently across the learning experience. Instructional design is the process of using our knowledge of how people learn to guide our choices in the sequence, materials, and modules to meet the needs of the learners. It is part science, specifically cognitive and psychology and problem-solving science. But it is also art, how to inspire, how to keep a user engaged. Large classes must be broken into lessons, providing a well-lit path and digestible chunks, allowing natural breaks balanced with encouragement from both the content and the platform to keep the user going to the next step. At Masterclass, for example, we mix a blend of intimate one-to-one discussion on technical skills, followed by watching the instructor in action, breaking down their work. We show examples of the results and serve also highly personal, inspiring stories, all to create a narrative that engages the learner throughout. Details become important. The tight frame around the instructor that you see in Masterclass's classes creates a sense of deep intimacy, of one-to-one learning. In fact, these are interviews conducted by our team with sometimes dozens of other people in the room. Unique camera technology and editing and post-production creates the desired effect of an instructor giving you their full attention. The content strategy determines why, which, and when certain content will be pursued. At lynda.com, for example, we had relationships with all the large software vendors and would often release tool training guides the same day that a new software version was released. We'd also be tracking market demand for skill-based training categories as they emerged. Evolution in, say, leadership and management techniques that were otherwise poorly covered in the market would be our opportunities. And finally, determining and measuring desired long-term learner outcomes and to establish a strong feedback loop between those and the pedagogy enables you to measure the success and evolve it. Simply put, the product is not the product in the sense that a technology company might define it. It is a combination of all three of these wildly different disciplines. And perhaps very successful EdTech companies are relatively rare because obtaining this balance turns out to be very hard organizationally. Here are some examples that I observed of how the different disciplines' culture complemented and clashed with each other. Being used to working on a 5 to 8 person technology squad, it's quite eye-opening to witness the sheer scale of what goes into making a piece of quality video content. There were close to 80 people on set for the filming of Masterclass's Gordon Ramsay cooking class. We had 5 cameras, a sound studio, catering truck, a whole other kitchen downstairs with already cooked chickens ready to go for that delicious oven reveal shot. We had a team in Masterclass dedicated to talent management to recruit and work with personalities and their often extensive and overly protective entourages. We had a dedicated team allocated to managing rights for music, film clips, and other copyrighted materials that we interdispersed in our content. Rarely well-known personalities own their rights to their own materials, and we were constantly grappling with the external rights holders who had little incentive to return our calls. Stuff like that greatly slows down any product innovation. Something as simple as rolling out our mobile application took many more months simply due to all the legal wrangling. Being exposed to the sheer scale and sophistication of the creative process in action built great empathy in me and allowed me to avoid trying to address complex issues with simplistic solutions. Content groups were often perplexed by technology's apparent lack of long-term planning. By nature, theirs is inherently waterfall, with dozens of complex steps, handoffs, and approvals, both internal and external. It might take months, sometimes years, to execute. For example, just the instructor research phase required the reading and watching of an entire instructor's body of work. Now, of course, product and engineering would argue that we do have long-term planning, roadmaps, and such forth. But to an untrained eye, the running of sprints with scant details, maybe a hypothesis, throw in a small team, ship it and see, particularly when you push out product features that aren't particularly well polished, even if they only affect a small percentage of our users. Or perhaps we're experimenting with reforming, or in the content team's eyes, messing with their content. To them, the product and engineering team might appear to be kind of flying by the seat of our pants. On the other hand, our technology team struggled with the content team's default mode. When it comes to data-driven decision-making, what works and what not in the content business is actually incredibly hard to predict. Something might greatly exceed all expectations, becoming a big hit, while other content misses the mark entirely, and it's not always clear why. Taste and intuition is paramount. Content team members are often judged by their eye, incredibly hard to be objective about. Now, of course, if you're Netflix, you have lots of data to predict what content you should produce that might be a hit. This is a luxury for data-staved, smaller scale operations. Iteration, testing, and validation on content is harder to do as it is an inherently linear process and costly. Collaboration. The many different disciplines have varied established industry norms, incentives, language, ways of working, specializations, and organizational structures of which you have to navigate. At lynda.com, I had to partner with a well-established content department, planning and releasing new content courses weekly at a tremendous pace. A consumer marketing team, planning and executing user acquisition and brand building campaigns. An enterprise sales team selling the product into organizations across 4 different industry types, segments: small, medium business, large enterprise, government, and a team dedicated to our international effort. Imagine the complexity for me and my product team. We had product teams supporting the underlying content discovery and video delivery infrastructure. A team was building enterprise solutions beyond the consumer product that was dedicated to the end user, such as addressing IT security needs, doing HR and learning management system integration, and tools for managers to assign and track learning. I had a growth team focused on driving up conversion rate for consumers, and an end user team focused on onboarding and retention of both consumers and the end user in enterprise environments. As we figured each other's strengths out and how to work together in complementary ways, it was powerful. Just as an example, how we complemented each other in an effort to make our business updates more effective, the PMs, well-structured thinkers, helped the content teams identify what metrics to focus on better and how to better structure their presentations. They in turn helped us turn our dry and uninspiring numbers and updates into good storytelling. Each function must be and be seen to be an equal and essential contributor. We have to strive to value the diversity and different perspectives each will bring. My second observation. Consider the following learning outcomes objectives, and I'm paraphrasing these. At lynda.com, it was about providing the lifelong learner needed skills to be successful in the pursuit of their careers and personal goals. Masterclass, inspire and build confidence that you can create and achieve your goals. Coursera, empower learners to advance their careers, further their studies, improve their communities, and change the world. Determining and measuring learning outcomes is one of the most elusive challenges for EdTech companies. Even self-reported measurements can be challenging. Yes, maybe Coursera, which they do, can track impact through self-reported surveys, but these can be very subjective and suffer survivor bias, but they're all you've got. At lynda.com, when measuring the impact of our skills-based training on specifically mid-career professionals trying to stay current with the recent crop of graduates trained in the latest and greatest techniques, well, often there's great stigma attached to not knowing how to perform a key skill if you're supposedly an experienced expert already. Such users will not readily admit that they did not know how to do something in the first place, even if their behavior indicates perhaps otherwise. And there's lots of intangibles. How do you measure confidence or inspiration, the belief that I can accomplish something? Now, I'm not going to go through detail here, but this is a typical raft of metrics that an EdTech company with both a consumer and enterprise arm might have. They include what you expect: measurement of traffic, visitors, engagement rates, financial metrics, and the SaaS funnel. Typical measurements such as video views, course completion, active user rates, and lifetime value. But given what I've just said about outcomes, you might see these are woefully inaccurate, or rather necessary but not sufficient metrics of a healthy EdTech business delivering on those long-term outcomes. And what constitutes value varies from user to user. This is an interesting stat. Across the industry, course completion hovers somewhere in the 20% rate, not across every business, but it's not unusual to have your course start rates and complete rates to be 20%, relatively. Yet repeat purchase renewal rates rarely fall below 50%, and sometimes a lot higher. And measurements such as NPS and customer satisfaction might be in the 80% range. So how can this be so? Well, what constitutes value to one user type will vary dramatically given another persona. In addition to simply engaging and consuming content, individual users may value simply having access to that content, having the service ready there in case they need it. Maybe they're valuing the sense of community and membership, being among other like-minded people. Maybe they're seeking the learning platform purely as motivation and to get ideas. Or they're even just there for entertainment. Maybe they have no intention of doing what they're learning, but they want to learn how those experts do it. Maybe it's aspirational. They've good intentions to learn more, but perhaps not the time. And they intend to get around to it eventually. And as a result, they keep the membership going. So value can mean something different to each user type. And even measuring that user engagement begs the question of what does valuable, purposeful, and authentic engagement even look like? Does it have to be frequent, habitual, or lengthy? When is enough value? Take, for example, the following learner types. Now, each of these learner types are seeking a different objective and are motivated by different benefits. Each group is extracting value from the service in their own way. And what might be the resulting engagement patterns that you might find for each of these different types of user types? So imagine each line that I reveal is a separate course that you're actually engaging with. And there's this elapsed time through your journey with the product. Now, a traditional course taker, you might expect is a pretty linear progression. Finish a class, sense of achievement, maybe get a certificate or qualification, later come back to do the next class. A small business knowledge consultant is sort of after just-in-time specific skills development. They're wanting to bone up on skills or prepare for a contract. Maybe when a new tool is launched, they want to understand, and then there might be long periods of time that might transpire before they come in to quickly learn what they need next. A category enthusiast we find their behaviors clustered around a set of classes, maybe going in and out, practicing, and their viewing might be very, very non-linear, selecting lessons of interest and skipping others. Cooking is a great example. The lifelong learner, you expect more habitual behavior because they're interested in a very broad range of the catalog, perhaps searching through the catalog, jumping from very different category to very different category, and spending time habitually learning on a topic of interest and then coming back later. And then the binge watcher might exhibit sampling behavior at the beginning, looking for something they're interested in, followed by deeper engagement when they find that, until they're bored and try something else. And of course, what happens when they burn through the content that they want? They churn. Now, ironically, the user that actually engaged with the service the most is the one that churned the first. So this is quite the opposite you expect from engagement and correlation. So engagement does not necessarily correlate with value or retention or extraction of value. My third point. Now, earlier adult learning EdTech platforms emphasized things like learning administration, LMSs, or video-based learning like MOOCs, with some notable exceptions in the language space where there was a lot of deep online testing, assessments, and preparation. And K-12 in particular has really pioneered gamification and learning through games. As EdTech platforms continue to proliferate, we're enabling a lot of new possibilities, particularly as there's more adoption of mobile, broadband is better, and collaboration technologies are really taking off. I will highlight three trends that I believe will fundamentally shift the focus of EdTech in the next few years. The first will be the rapid maturing and evolution of more participatory learning methods as opposed to passive learning methods. Interactive methods of learning involve the learner actively doing something. That deeper engagement tends to generate more curiosity, make things more tangible. It includes things like games, project work, challenges, polls, whiteboarding, and a whole host of other activities. The technology in this is really beginning to scale. Now, collaborative learning methods involve learning with others, which can happen synchronously altogether or asynchronously, sort of out of sync. These provide potential network effects and efficiencies for the EdTech company, allowing students to learn from each other, to actually generate user-generated content, and to generate a real sense of purpose and community around the content. Secondly, it provides greater natural accountability. Those learning together in cohorts tend to keep each other going for longer. That reduces dropout and reduces churn. To illustrate a little bit more, this is a learning pyramid. It's been around for at least 80 years. It's attributed to educator Ed Dale. Now, I'm going to hear the collective groans among educators in the audience for a good reason, that this pyramid has been validly questioned, given that it claims different actual retention rates, like supposedly listening to a lecture is only 5% retention rate, but being a teacher is 95%. Now, those numbers differ clearly, and it's going to differ by individual. It does seem to suggest also that there's the perfect optimal learning approach that will work for everyone. So before you send angry comments, I'm using this for illustrative purposes. And if you think about much of EdTech today, it is listen, read, and watch. It's that passive teaching method. And there is strong evidence that students do retain more information the deeper they engage with the material that they're seeking to learn. More authentic, multimodal, active, not passive, and tapping into their critical thinking, such as demonstration, showing and decomposing down reproducible steps, discussing and exploring in groups of others, doing, practicing, and executing the skills in low-risk environments. And of course, teaching others, which can be guiding and mentoring and assisting others, not necessarily being the teacher. And enabling more of these learning styles allows for greater flexibility for the learner to find a style or mix of styles that best suit them. We have a long ways to go to enable the full range of these learning styles at scale through technology, but we've made great inroads, particularly in the last couple of years. Now, a second big trend is how we'll start leveraging data and machine learning to better predict, adapt, and reinforce the appropriate learning experience overall. Now, I'm cautious about this prediction because AI machine learning is much hyped and there's a long way to go. And this is particularly hard to scale in EdTech companies with so many different individual learning preferences, different goals, and not actually all that much data, because learning is a very taxing undertaking and you just can't spend an immense or inordinate amount of time on the platform learning all the time. You need breaks. So the volume of data and the knowledge of how to use that data just isn't there yet, with some rare exceptions, I'm sure. Now, we're just starting to experiment with personalizing the learning experience. Historically, this has been more of a traditional kind of one-size-fits-all, with a user-initiated search and discovery to surface the content appropriate to my goal, my learning style, and my existing level of proficiency. Now, by including explicit signals such as formative assessments that you might take up front, goal setting and tracking, other assessments you might take as you go, as well as implicit signals, which is that user behavior, and comparative signals, such as observing areas that a user may be struggling with relative to other learners who have gone through the same experience. We will open up the possibility of tailoring the teaching methods and curriculum to be the right environment to meet the specific goals and needs of that user. And with algorithms rather than humans adapting the learning experience, that will mean that we can be quicker to adapt, have more paths to adapt to, and more cost and time efficient than traditional learning methods. And finally, transitioning from traditional in-person instruction to online learning is not easy for some. Traditional in-person learning has many benefits, including a faster human touch intervention and instructor peer-to-peer FaceTime that's very hard to replicate online. It's easy to become disengaged or discouraged when you're learning, particularly when the going gets hard, and well, you drop out or put it off. A lack of someone or something holding your feet to the fire while surrounded by entertaining distractions, mobile, Netflix, in an unstructured environment makes procrastination on learning easy. There's always something easier to get your attention. Time management has proven to be a very difficult undertaking for many online learners, even as we've tried to have structure like reminders or class times. And this is especially true for any classes that are asynchronous, that allow students to proceed solely at their own pace. Paradoxically, in the endeavor to provide the value proposition for independence and convenience, there is a tendency to underestimate the commitment these courses require to be successful. And in the absence of regularly scheduled classes and some kind of accounting mechanism, many online learners just find that time management and follow through a common struggle. Now, there's a fair degree of innovation going on in this space to address. Some educators are looking to a hybrid approach, trying to bring the online class together with a more prescribed and mandatory live or synchronous session. Particularly traditional education institutions are integrating technology into their existing courses that are structured a little bit more this way and trying to augment the traditional model with more technology and more offline and asynchronous options to complement it. Some are trying to recreate the full experience, for example, bringing a college experience online to build the social and bonding aspects that might lead to a greater cohort cohesion and more mutual accountability. We're using data to detect drops in attention to intervene early, even before the student themselves might realize that they're disengaging, to prod them back into action. Cohorted learning, balancing learning at your own pace and schedule, yet moving through the journey for others. A little peer pressure and instructor engagement is not such a bad thing. When you let yourself down, that's one thing. When you let others down, that's something else entirely. And then, of course, games and simulations allowing the learner to analyze different options without running real risks. Maybe having multiple paths or choose your own adventure is just so much more interesting and engaging. And then there's the entire promise that hasn't even been tapped yet of virtual and augmented reality in terms of deeply immersive learning environments, and also providing a lot more data about how the user is responding to that stimuli. So in conclusion, EdTech is a rewarding industry combining the disciplines of an ultra cross-functional team. To be successful, a product leader must effectively build empathy and collaborate with all of their counterparts to deliver the product. Secondly, measuring whether you're achieving learner outcomes is actually very tricky. Online behavioral metrics and traditional product performance metrics provide only a subpart of the overall picture, and the actual delivery of those learner goals may be something else entirely. And third, the next generation of successful EdTech companies will enable more participatory rather than the passive experiences online and at scale. And they will use data to tailor the education experience to suit the learner's preferences and style. And if you're interested, please check out my book, The Influential Product Manager, where you'll learn many more techniques on being influential, and visit me at my website or connect to me through either LinkedIn or email. Thank you very much for your time.